I love conspiracy theories, and one of my favorite movies growing up was National Treasure. Nicolas Cage was running around looking for clues left behind by the Freemasons. And one of the deepest rabbit holes and one connected that you can find yourself going down is the Knights Templar. Did the Knights Templar really die? And if not, where did they go? Were they guarding the Holy Grail and the Ark of the Covenant? Did they possess sacred treasure and lost knowledge? But first, we need some context and lay some groundwork. And with that being said, I'm Josh, and let's deep dive. The Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, or just the Knights Templar, were a knightly monastic order that emerged during the fiery crucible that was the Crusades. Imagine a knight trained since the age of 7 with lance and sword, armed with the finest armor, weapons, and best horse money could buy, adorned with a distinctive white mantle and red cross. Accompanied by servants, squires, and assistants, these men were fully dedicated to the cause. They had taken the counsels of perfection, the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. They were somewhat like holy monks, but unlike monks, they were not confined to the monastery, and unlike priests, their life work was war. Templars were the most elite warriors, serving as the rear guard for professional armies during the Crusades. These guys were the best Christendom had to offer. They were not beholden to any single king, nation, or even the church sometimes. Their only Lord and Master was God. As grand as all it sounds, it wasn't an easy choice or an easy matter to join this elite group. No familial ties or social obligations were permitted. When you joined, you gave up everything you owned to the order. You left life without wife or child and never owned any land in your name. Templars were known to never surrender in battle, and they were expected to be willing to give their lives to protect the Holy Land, as surrender was not an option. But all this had to start somewhere, or with someone, and that someone is Hugh Payne.
Hugh de Paynes was the man who would found the Knights Templar and serve as their first Grand Master. His origins are shrouded in mystery, but he was likely born in 1070 in the village of Payons, a small village in the Champagne region of France. Coming from a knightly lineage, his family served as sworn swords for the Count of Champagne. He would have trained for battle since the age of 7, and as a young man, he was ready to join the ranks of knights in the Count's service. Like many other knights, Hugh heard the Pope's call for crusade, and like so many others, made his way to the east. Knights joined the Crusades for many different reasons. Some went to escape past debts, be forgiven crimes, others sought riches or personal glory, and still others went out of pure religious devotion. Jerusalem was a place of ancient wonders and spiritual enlightenment. Destinies could be changed. It's unknown exactly why Hugh went off to war, but in 1099 he fought in the siege of Jerusalem. After the battle, Hugh decided to stay behind along with 8 other companions. His companions began assisting pilgrims as they traveled to Jerusalem, and in 1119, Hugh approached King Baldwin II of Jerusalem. He asked permission to have the Templars officially recognized with the express purpose of protecting pilgrims. The king gave his blessing and assigned them guard of Temple Mount, their fabled headquarters.
In the mid-1090s, the Christian Byzantines were being pushed back by Islamic forces. Religious pilgrims were plagued by bandits, and Muslim leaders threatened to deny Christians the right to visit their sacred sites. This caused the Christian population of Europe to worry so much that during the Council of Clermont in 1095, Pope Urban II called for the First Crusade. This call resonated with Christendom. Without a modern printing press, email, or cell phones, rumblings started all across Europe, and warriors began assembling to head east. For Christians, the Holy Land was the place of Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. For Muslims, it was the sacred site of the Prophet Muhammad's night journey. In July 1099, Jerusalem fell after a 5-day siege. The knights who took the city founded the Kingdom of Jerusalem and started the first knightly orders. These knights stayed behind to help establish this newly formed kingdom, assuming new roles as the Crusader states began to take shape. These knights who stayed behind needed a new job, and I think as warrior monks, your options are kind of limited. The Templars began protecting pilgrims from bandits, and soon after became prestigious enough to be granted headquarters on the Temple Mount by King Baldwin II. This was the old site of King Solomon's temple, retrofitted into military barracks with stables, smithies, and training grounds. These grounds were next to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, where they guarded Christ's tomb. The Templar Knights were based in northeastern France, and by the end of the 12th century, Templars had established foundries in agricultural lands across the wealthiest cities in Europe. They became highly respected by their enemies, so much so that once an Islamic commander boasted that his own elite cavalry regiment was the Knights Templar of Islam. The Knights rarely fought with more than 300 men, but they helped arm and organize allies 3 to 5 times larger than themselves. Their experience and knowledge of the region were their most significant asset, and they became crucial for the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Younger Templars would be expected to fight in the Middle East, but middle-aged Templars with landowning experience would be expected to oversee Templar estates. There were even older men who would join and donate a substantial sum to the cause. One of the most famous of these guys was William Marshall. He was the right-hand man to 5 kings, including Henry II, Richard the Lionheart, and King John of England. He decided to join the Templars, and on his deathbed was able to fulfill an oath that he had made to join in his youth while in the Holy Land. This was the first time that knights had come together and united under one banner, undivided with religious fervor. But after the 1130s, not only knights were accepted, but also commoners, such as masons, blacksmiths, and other craftsmen. Really, anyone of use to the Templars could become a full member of the order. They had a written set of rules, creatively referred to as the Rules of the Templars. The first version was written in Latin in 1128, and another was written in vernacular French. It provided a list of equipment and how to maintain it. The rules also gave strategic guidelines for combat, ensuring that they would maintain discipline within their ranks. Finally, it instructed the Templars on how to live life outside of the battlefield, and they were read aloud daily at lunch to reinforce the Templar code.
Get to the
Yeah, I was getting there. Now that we have a framework for some of the agreed upon history of the Templars, we can finally explore what you came here for. Secrets of the Knights Templar. There was a secret society in Istanbul known as the Brothers of the East, which studied alchemy, astronomy, mathematics, sacred geometry, and hidden knowledge. Hugh de Payens had heard about these so-called Brothers of the East in his travels and requested a meeting with them. This is where they had told him of a pre-Diluvian civilization, one that had a thriving and expansive society before the Great Flood, like one of Noah in the Bible. It was a global civilization that had the technology of electricity, levitation, and advanced medicine. These great people were wiped out in the flood, and all remnants of their mighty culture disappeared. This pre-flood civilization is what we call today Atlantis. The Brothers of the East, who claimed to be the survivors and direct descendants of this ancient, advanced civilization, had passed down this knowledge from one generation to the next. This secret society informed Hugh de Payens about the hidden knowledge and how artifacts could be found in King Solomon's temple, under the Temple Mount. Knowing that he must keep this dangerous knowledge out of the hands of Muslims, the church, and all other knights who could not be trusted to protect and share this knowledge, Hugh had the perfect cover by protecting the pilgrims in Jerusalem, which in turn gave him and the Templars direct access to King Solomon's temple. As soon as the Templars established their new headquarters, they began excavating secretly beneath their headquarters, which sits on the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is a mountain in Jerusalem built by the legendary King Solomon in the 10th century BC, said to house vast treasures including the Ark of the Covenant. Thousands of years have buried it beneath the Temple Mount, where the Templar headquarters now stand. Since the 1120s, when the Templars arrived in Jerusalem, they initiated an archaeological dig underneath their headquarters, which was their primary purpose in the Holy Land. They were looking for and finding texts and artifacts, expanding their knowledge, and they needed to preserve this knowledge until a time when the world was ready to hear the truth. They searched the Holy Land for sacred relics and biblical sites. The Templars had been making secret trips to the New World to store these relics. One of the most important relics the Templars searched for was the fabled Ark of the Covenant. Missing since 587 BC, the Ark of the Covenant was last seen somewhere under the Temple Mount. It could be interpreted as a radio to God or potentially a weapon of mass destruction. First mentioned in the book of Exodus, it was referenced over 200 times in the Bible. The Ark was said to spread natural disasters and plagues, topple mountains, and bring down the walls of Jericho. Any army that wielded it became invincible, as it would fly in the sky ahead of the army, leading the way and protecting them from danger. The Ark was a box measuring 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide and high. Made from acacia wood and covered in gold both inside and out, a pure gold mold surrounded it, and two cherubim kneeling and facing each other had their wings spread upward over the center to meet in the middle. This is where manna comes in.
Isn't that what God used to feed the Israelites?
Well, yes, it is a white flaky substance that the Israelites ate, but unlike in the biblical narrative, in Egypt and in Atlantis, it was a white flaky substance where processed into powder, namely monoatomic gold. It is highly conductive and discharges electricity through the wings of the cherubim. This is why the ark cannot be touched directly, or you would die. Instead, a rod made of acacia wood, like the one Aaron possessed, was used to safely discharge the electricity into the ground. The ark was extremely dangerous and was kept half a mile away from the Israelite camp. Moses built a tabernacle around the ark, with a wool covering to help manage the static discharge. The 10 Commandments were also housed inside the ark. 4 gold rings were fastened to its legs for the insertion of wooden poles, made from acacia wood, which were never to be removed. Weighing about 500 pounds, it was held by 4 priests from the Levite tribe. Many believe the ark possessed advanced technology and might have acted as a capacitor. With 2 conductive plates positioned parallel to a non-conductive material in the middle, known as a dielectric, gold is an excellent conductor, capable of generating lightning or electrical shocks. Some theorize that the ark represents remnants of a lost technology from Atlantis. The Knights Templar are believed to have buried 6 arks in underground vaults. Depictions of them can be found in temple walls across Egypt, and they were relocated to their current location around 1346. Additionally, at the Temple of Seti in Abydos, there is a closed room not accessible to the public that features a depiction of the Ark of the Covenant. In this depiction, Pharaoh Seti I is shown with his hand extended, holding a mountain cake of white manna. Next to this depiction, there is graffiti showing 3 red Templar crosses. The Templars ventured into Egypt and established a headquarters at the Temple of Isis in Philae, where Templar crosses can be found inside the temple. They studied various aspects of history, math, and alchemical processes at numerous temples throughout Egypt. Egyptian hieroglyphs reveal a connection to Atlantis. Specifically, the hieroglyphs at the Osirian Temple in Abydos provide intriguing insights. Dikra?
It's Dikra Patella, Bobby Boucher.
Mama said that. Mama said that. My mama said that. My mama said that.
She's gonna
My mama
say
said that.
Thanks. These plants grow around the megalithic structures, and by applying alchemical processes to this plant, hydrofluoric acid, a substance capable of eroding granite, can be extracted, with gold, lead, and beeswax being the only known materials able to withstand this acid. But the Templars' time in the Middle East would come to an end by 1187. Saladin's forces had reconquered Jerusalem. The Templars gathered their sacred treasures and made their way back to Europe. They had to find a new way to make a living and had adapted their loan strategy to pilgrims into full-on banking. They would safeguard valuables and lend to nobility. Their letters of credit could now be cashed in anywhere in Europe. They also sidestepped the sin of usury, or charging interest, a practice frowned upon by the church. They instead supplemented their income with service fees, handling charges, and by charging rent on property. When customers died, the Templars would swoop in and repossess the land. Soon, the Templars became the biggest bank in Europe. They had massive land holdings across the continent. Kings were indebted to them. In fact, King John of England used the crown jewels as collateral. As you will soon see, France had become severely indebted to them.
How had it come to this? King Philip IV of France, nicknamed the Iron King, known for his coldness and brutishness. It was said of him that he is neither man nor beast, but a statue. He was in debt to the Templars for years, and France's economy was in the toilet. Philip had squandered it on wars and extravagant expenditures. He feared Templar influence and the day they came to collect. Add to this his bitter rivalry with Pope Boniface VIII, Philip was losing a power struggle with the church. Then in 1303, Boniface died and Clement V became pontiff 2 years later. Clement was a Frenchman and a childhood friend of Philip IV. The new pope quickly relocated his center of power from Rome to Avignon, marking the beginning of a period known as the Avignon Papacy. For Philip, with his rival dead and dear friend on the chair of St. Peter, he made a bold move to erase his debt with the Templars. It all culminated on October 13th, 1307, Friday the 13th. Suddenly, Templars are arrested all across France. Templar strongholds are stormed, and leaders are dragged out to angry mobs. The Templar navy, comprising 18 ships, disappears and is never found. Many knights go into hiding and disappear from the historical record. Many more were thrown into prison to await torture. Their Grand Master, Jacques de Molay, was brought forward to hear the charges against his order. His face filled with horror as they were read aloud. The Templars were accused of spitting on crosses, indecent kissing, idolatry, and being in league with Baphomet himself. The Grand Master denied the charges and maintained that he was ever God's faithful servant. It was not the answer Philip needed to hear. Torture would fix that. The Templars hold out as long as they can, but one by one they all confess under torture to the charges against them. During the next 7 years, inquisitions and investigations took place as they rotted in prison. Many Templars recanted their confessions, and 54 were burned at the stake in 1310. Finally, Grand Master Molay also recanted his confession and was burned at the stake in 1314. Legend has it that while burning, Molay cursed King Philip and Pope Clement, saying they would soon meet him in heaven. Within the year, both the king and the pope would be dead.
Fractured and desperate, the remaining Templars had heard rumors of their impending arrest and fled in two main directions. The first direction was Portugal. King Denis refused to persecute the knights or confiscate any Templar property during the dissolution. Not only did King Denis refuse to prosecute any of the Templars, but he actually helped them form the new military order of Christ, which succeeded the Templars and were essential in the conquest of the Americas. The second direction that most of the order fled to was Scotland. Robert the Bruce, King of Scotland, was a fierce rebel and enemy of the English, with whom they were in a struggle for their independence. Robert was a friend of the Templars and welcomed them gladly into his ranks, helping Scotland finally secure its independence. Fast forward to November 8th, 1898. A mysterious stone is discovered in Kensington, Minnesota by a Swedish immigrant named Olaf Oman. Olaf and his family were cutting down a tree. As the tree fell over, encased in the roots was a Kensington stone. On the stone were runic inscriptions that translated to
8 Gotlanders and 22 Norwegians on an acquisition journey from Vinland to the west. We had camped by 2 boats, 1 day's journey north from this stone. We were to fish one day. After we came home, found 10 men, blood and dead. Mother Mary, save from evil. And on the side of the stone read, have 10 men by the sea to look after our ships. 14 days travel from this island. Year 1362.
Immediately dismissed as a hoax due to what was believed to be runic mistakes. First, the dotted R, believed to not have existed in medieval Swedish. The hooked X and the dotted X contained umlauts, pronunciation markers believed to not have existed at the time. However, in 2004, researchers discovered a set of papers known as the Larson Papers. Lo and behold, were the hooked X and the dotted X. Then the dotted R was discovered in churches all around Gotland, the homeland of the Templars that fought for Robert the Bruce. Okay, great. Do I still have you all here? Because we're heading over to the New World. In the Micmac myth, Glooskap arrived suddenly on the back of a whale, and then he built a mighty ship that lay on the harbor of this mysterious island. Glooskap lived alone on this island and filled it with an abundance of trees which came from a foreign land. Glooskap then held court on the island for many years. Mysteriously holding court is a European concept that should be foreign to the Micmac people. The Sinclairs are a famous Scottish clan of Viking descent. They were an original Knights Templar family that had fought for Robert the Bruce. The Sinclair family mapped Iceland and Greenland. Later, in 1360, Henry Sinclair, the son of William Sinclair, sailed to America along the old Scandinavian routes. He met the Micmac people who took Sinclair's flag as their own. Seriously, it's the same. Look, like Glooskap, Sinclair found his own island, Oak Island. There he planted oak trees, foreign to the region. He also built a fort and held court, exactly like the Glooskap legend. Later on, south in Italy, Christopher Columbus was born in Genoa, a city of strategic importance and home to a major Templar stronghold, which served as their main seaport for voyages from Europe to the Middle East. Columbus had heard about the Templars and their voyages to the New World. Being obsessed with finding the secret maps of the Templars, he orchestrated a daring plan. He pulled the granddaughter of the Grand Master of the Knights Templar out of a convent to marry her. The dowry he sought was the keys to their library, which contained the maps and a treasure trove of knowledge. He flew the Templar cross on his 3 ships in order to attempt to deceive the indigenous people, making them believe he was a Templar in order to reveal the location of the treasures he sought, which were thought to be secret artifacts and knowledge hidden in the New World. Even today, the Knights Templar continues their mission of protecting this sacred knowledge in the modern times. The Templar Order claims to have many vaults around the world that contain ancient artifacts and records that could change the world, least of all the Ark of the Covenant, Holy Grail, and even the bones of Jesus and his family. Now this is one hell of a story. Don't get me wrong, I'm thoroughly entertained. Is there any truth to these claims? Sure, the Templars must have learned much in the Middle East. The Middle East was known for importing math, astronomy, science, and many other things at the time. They might have even learned about pre-flood civilizations during their time in Egypt studying the temples. But magic, super weapons, ancient high technology? I don't know, that might be a bit of a stretch. But the Grand Master of the Knights Templar say we might not have to wait too long. See you in the next one.
So when was the last time the vaults were opened?
Would have been about 40 years ago. We're looking at opening one of them soon, actually.